Hey guys, tonight we travel back to a time when gods walked the earth, and their lives were filled with mystery, power, and peculiar friendships. Imagine yourself standing in the heart of Mount Olympus, gazing out over the vast realms of gods, demigods, and creatures beyond imagination. You're surrounded by the thundering winds of Zeus, the king of all the gods, the ruler of the skies, and the god of thunder. It's a realm where power flows like the rivers, and where not even the gods are free from the intrigue and complexity of their relationships. But tonight, we're diving into one of the most curious and perhaps overlooked friendships in Greek mythology. You probably won't survive this journey without questioning just how seriously these gods took their animal connections. Could it be that Zeus, the king of all gods, had an unusual bond with a certain nocturnal creature? Well, tonight, we'll explore why Zeus considered owls to be not only his best friends, but also messengers of deeper truths about the universe. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, post your location and the local time, because I'm genuinely curious where this adventure is reaching you from tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Zeus, you see, wasn't just a god of thunder and lightning. His role as king of Mount Olympus involved much more than ruling over the other gods. He had a deep connection to the world around him, to the forces of nature, and yes, to certain creatures. Among all the creatures that roamed his vast domain, one bird stood out in particular, the owl. But why? What was it about this silent, often eerie bird that made Zeus see it as a special companion? Well, it wasn't always so obvious. To understand Zeus's affection for owls, we have to look at the grand scope of his rule. Imagine a place so powerful that it could command the sky itself, where gods could manipulate the heavens, the earth, and everything in between. Zeus, as the sky god, would often be associated with thunder, lightning, and weather. Yet, underneath this raw power, there was a subtler, more intellectual side to Zeus. This was the side that was intrigued by the owl, a creature that represented something more mysterious: wisdom, insight, and vision beyond the obvious. The owl was not simply an animal that Zeus casually admired. Its role was tied to the deeper meanings of knowledge and foresight. In fact, Zeus's association with the owl began with another godly figure, Athena, the goddess of wisdom. Athena, you see, was the first to elevate the owl to such high status, using it as a symbol of her own divine intellect. The owl, ever watchful, ever vigilant, was a creature that mirrored Athena's nature, a symbol of wisdom, knowing when to act and when to remain silent. However, Zeus's affinity for the owl was not a simple reflection of Athena's influence. It was more complex than that. The owl held a deeper significance for Zeus, one that transcended mere symbolism. And it all started with a single moment, a gift from Athena to Zeus, marking the beginning of a peculiar but profound friendship. The ancient world was full of myths, but none quite as rich and peculiar as the relationship between Zeus and the owl. Zeus, as the ruler of all gods, had many creatures that served him or symbolized his power. However, none seemed to capture his imagination as the owl did. To understand why, we need to look back to the earliest days of Greek mythology when the owl's connection to the gods began. before Zeus made the owl a figure of importance, there was another goddess who shared this deep, symbolic bond with the bird. Athena, goddess of wisdom. Athena had an incredibly strong association with the owl, believing the bird was an embodiment of her own insight and intellect. The owl represented a keen perception of the world, the kind of vision that saw beyond the surface, into the deeper, more hidden truths of life. Athena's sacred animal, the owl, was often depicted perched on her shoulder, a companion in the search for knowledge. However, Zeus's fondness for the bird had a different origin, an act of divine diplomacy and mutual respect. As the story goes, Athena gifted Zeus with an owl. This wasn't just a casual exchange. It was a moment that held profound significance. The owl was not just any bird. It was a divine symbol imbued with wisdom, perception, and clarity. By accepting this gift, Zeus didn't just take on another symbol to add to his impressive collection of divine associations. No, this was something deeper, a signal that Zeus, despite his vast power over the heavens and earth, still had much to learn from the wisdom of the owl. But what made this connection even more unique was the owl's role as a creature of foresight, a prophet in its own right. The owl wasn't just a passive observer in the world of Zeus and Athena. It was believed to possess knowledge of the future. Some myths even suggested that the owl could see the unseen, giving it the ability to interpret omens and foresee events that others could not. This made the owl a fitting companion for a god like Zeus, who, despite his power, was constantly surrounded by intrigue and the unpredictable forces of fate. Historians still argue whether this connection between Zeus and the owl was more about divine camaraderie or the recognition of something the gods themselves could not control, the passage of time and the unknowable future. What we know for certain is that the owl became a symbol of something much larger than its physical form. It represented the eternal search for knowledge, wisdom, and the ever-present need to look beyond the obvious. Zeus's relationship with the owl was, in many ways, an acknowledgement of his own limitations. As the ruler of Mount Olympus, Zeus commanded the sky and the forces of nature. But even he could not predict the twists of fate or the hidden truths of the universe. This was where the owl came in, a reminder that no matter how powerful you might be, there is always something more to learn, something deeper to uncover. The owl, with its watchful eyes and silent flight, was a creature that saw the world differently, and in this, it held a special place in Zeus's vast and often chaotic existence. But beyond this intellectual connection, there was something even more fascinating about the owl's role in Zeus's life. It was, in many ways, a messenger, a divine being capable of carrying important messages across the heavens. In ancient Greek culture, birds were often seen as omens, carrying the will of the gods to the mortal world. The owl, with its deep, knowing gaze, was particularly well suited to this role. Zeus, with all his power, needed a creature that could interpret the messages of the cosmos, one that could provide insight when the future was unclear. The owl, then, wasn't just a creature of knowledge. It was a bridge between the known and the unknown, between the gods and the mortals. Its ability to see in the dark made it a perfect companion for Zeus, who often faced the complexities of ruling a universe filled with both light and shadow. The owl's silent wings, its keen sight, and its connection to prophecy made it an ideal creature to serve as a divine confidant. In many ways, the owl mirrored Zeus's own life, an existence filled with power, mystery, and the constant need to seek deeper understanding. While Zeus ruled over the heavens, the owl ruled over the quiet, hidden corners of the world, always watching, always waiting, always seeing what others could not. And perhaps it was this balance, Zeus's loud, thunderous rule and the owl's quiet wisdom, that made their connection so profound. But what did this all mean for the relationship between Zeus and the owl? Was this just another passing symbol? Or was there something deeper at play in this divine companionship? As we dive deeper into the relationship between Zeus and the owl, it's essential to understand the broader context of Athena's role in the mythological world. Athena, a goddess born from the head of Zeus himself, was revered for her intellect, strategy, and wisdom. While Zeus may have been the king of the gods, Athena was widely acknowledged as the goddess who truly embodied rational thought, war strategy, and the deeper mysteries of life. She was the protector of cities, the goddess of civilization, and the patron of scholars and artists, so it's no surprise that she, too, would have a strong connection to the owl, an animal associated with insight and foresight. The owl was far more than a mere pet or companion to Athena. It was her sacred animal, the creature that represented her unique qualities. In the myths, Athena was often depicted with an owl perched on her shoulder or sitting nearby, symbolizing her wisdom. The owl was not just a passive creature in her mythos. It was active in conveying her divine understanding of the world. It was, in a sense, her eyes in the dark, a creature that could see what others could not. Much like Athena herself, in Greek culture, the owl came to symbolize wisdom, knowledge, and intellectual clarity, all qualities that were deeply entwined with Athena's essence. Yet, despite her deep connection to the owl, Athena's relationship with the bird wasn't solely about intellectual pursuits. There was a more practical aspect to this connection, too. Owls, as creatures that hunted by night, were also symbols of the unseen, of things that lay beneath the surface of everyday life. This is where Zeus's interest in the owl takes on a more profound meaning. As a ruler, Zeus was constantly navigating the unseen realms of power, both among the gods and with mortals. His command of thunder, lightning, and the skies gave him immense influence. But there were always forces at play that even he couldn't control. Fate, destiny, and the whims of the other gods were often beyond his grasp. The owl, by contrast, represented the idea that there were hidden truths in the world. Truths that could only be seen with great perception, patience, and a willingness to look beyond the obvious. Historians still argue whether Zeus's fascination with owls was born out of a genuine appreciation for the wisdom they represented, or whether it was more a recognition of his own limitations. Was he seeking to understand the deeper forces of the world that even he, as the mighty thunder god, could not control? Was the owl merely a symbol of insight that he admired? Or was it an acknowledgement of his need for guidance? One could argue that Zeus's relationship with the owl reflected a deeper truth about his character. Despite his immense power, he wasn't all-knowing, and there were realms beyond his reach. Perhaps the owl represented the divine wisdom that Zeus was not fully privy to, yet which he needed to rule effectively. Athena, aware of the limitations of the gods, had always understood the value of wisdom and foresight. She had no problem accepting that there were forces beyond her control, and she made peace with the mysteries of the universe. The owl, as a symbol of that wisdom, was a perfect match for her, representing clarity and knowledge in a world full of uncertainty. For Zeus, however, this was a bit more complicated. Zeus had always been the supreme deity, the ruler of gods and men. And to admit that there were things he didn't understand was perhaps a harder pill for him to swallow. It's likely that his fondness for the owl came from this recognition, that even as king of the gods, there was a need for insight and knowledge that he could not always find on his own. But the relationship between Zeus and Athena, and the owl's role in their connection, wasn't just a matter of intellectual or philosophical symbolism. It had real-world implications. The owl became a sign of favor from Athena, and by extension, it symbolized Zeus's own power. Athena's gift of the owl to Zeus was not just a gesture of goodwill. It was a strategic move. By bestowing the owl upon Zeus, Athena was also offering him a token of the wisdom that could guide his decisions. The owl became a conduit for the wisdom of the gods, a way to connect with the unseen forces of fate and knowledge that Zeus, as a god of action and power, might otherwise overlook. The owl, with its silent flight and sharp vision, served as a reminder to Zeus that even he could benefit from quiet contemplation and deeper understanding. Perhaps, in some small way, the owl offered Zeus a form of humility, a lesson in the value of wisdom over brute strength. This would explain why Zeus, despite his control over the skies and thunder, would treasure the owl as one of his best companions. And yet, Zeus's bond with the owl remained shrouded in mystery, much like the bird itself. In the end, the true nature of their connection is still a topic of debate among scholars. Did Zeus truly see the owl as a symbol of his own wisdom? Or did he use the owl as a tool to access something greater, something beyond his understanding? The answer, like much of Greek mythology, remains elusive. But one thing is certain: the owl's presence in Zeus's world was far from incidental. It was a symbol of a deeper truth that even the mighty king of the gods could not escape. The wisdom of the owl was a force in the world that demanded respect, even from Zeus himself. In the ancient Greek world, the owl wasn't just a bird. It was an emblem, a symbol that resonated deeply with the people of the time, especially in connection with wisdom and knowledge. But its importance didn't just come from the gods who revered it. It had a much broader significance in Greek culture, and perhaps nowhere was this more evident than in the city of Athens. Athens was the intellectual heart of ancient Greece, the birthplace of philosophy, art, and democracy. It was here that the owl became firmly entrenched as a symbol of knowledge. The owl was often depicted on the silver drachma coins minted in Athens, its solemn, watchful eyes staring out from the metal, a reminder to all who gazed upon it of the city's dedication to wisdom and learning. The city itself, often referred to as the cradle of Western civilization, held the owl in high esteem, seeing it not just as an animal, but as a divine protector of their values and ideals. But what was it about the owl that made it so universally revered in Greek society? The owl was unique among birds, unlike eagles or hawks, which symbolized power and aggression. The owl embodied stillness, patience, and insight. It was a creature that seemed to live in two worlds, one foot in the realm of darkness and the other in the realm of light. Owls hunted at night, relying on their sharp vision to detect prey in the dark. This ability to see in the darkness gave the owl a metaphorical connection to knowledge hidden in the shadows, to truths that weren't immediately obvious to the untrained eye. The owl, in essence, represented the idea of looking beyond appearances and finding deeper meaning in the world around you. This idea was central to the Greek understanding of wisdom. It was not enough to simply see the world as it was. One had to look deeper, beyond the surface, to understand the hidden truths of existence. And in this sense, the owl was the perfect companion to the gods, particularly Athena and Zeus. The bird didn't just represent a kind of intellectual superiority. It embodied a philosophy, a way of thinking that was central to Greek culture. It suggested that true knowledge didn't come from immediate observation, but from contemplation, understanding, and insight into the unknown. But why, you might wonder? Did the owl become specifically tied to Athena and Zeus? And what made it such an enduring symbol? The answer lies in the shared qualities of both gods and the way they represented knowledge in different ways. Athena, as the goddess of wisdom, was often depicted with the owl as a symbol of her intellectual prowess. But Zeus, as the god of the sky and ruler of the cosmos, needed a creature that could see the hidden workings of the world. A creature that could sense the cosmic patterns that even he, in his infinite power, could not fully grasp. Historians still argue whether the owl's deep connection to the gods was based purely on symbolism, or whether it was a more practical choice. The owl's nocturnal nature, its silent flight, and its ability to see in the dark all made it an ideal creature for the gods, who, like humans, often grappled with forces beyond their control. In many ways, the owl's quiet presence mirrored the silent workings of the universe, an unseen force that influenced everything, yet was difficult to understand. Its very nature seemed to reflect the essence of divine wisdom, which often worked in the background, hidden from direct sight, but powerful nonetheless. For Zeus, the owl represented something even more profound. Zeus, as the ruler of all gods, was a god of action, of immediate impact. He commanded the skies, summoned storms, and struck down his enemies with thunder. His power was direct and often overwhelming. But in his relationship with the owl, Zeus was reminded that there were other kinds of power, subtle, quiet, and indirect. The owl's silent flight and its ability to navigate the unseen world of darkness was a reminder that there were forces in the universe that operated outside of Zeus's control. Forces that required patience, reflection, and careful attention. In many ways, the owl became a symbol of balance in Zeus's world, a reminder that while raw power was necessary, it was not enough. Wisdom, foresight, and understanding the deeper workings of the universe were just as essential. The owl, in its quiet way, represented the idea that even the greatest gods needed to look beyond their immediate grasp of power and acknowledge the forces that lay hidden beneath the surface. Perhaps this was why Zeus came to view the owl as one of his best companions, a reminder that no matter how mighty one might be, there was always something to learn, always something to discover. The owl's role as a messenger, too, was not to be overlooked. In Greek mythology, birds often served as divine messengers, carrying the will of the gods from one place to another. The owl, with its deep connection to the unseen world, was particularly suited for this task, whether delivering messages of fate, offering wisdom from the gods, or simply watching over the world. The owl played a crucial role in maintaining the balance between the known and the unknown. Its ability to navigate the darkness made it a fitting companion for the gods, especially Zeus, who ruled over the light and the sky, but was not immune to the mysteries that lay hidden beneath the surface. The owl's symbolic presence in Athens, particularly, suggests that the ancient Greeks didn't just see it as an animal. It was a symbol of their values, their pursuit of knowledge, and their understanding that wisdom came not from brute force, but from careful thought and contemplation. The owl, then, was more than just a bird. It was a messenger of the gods, a creature that embodied the deeper truths of the world and reminded the gods themselves, including Zeus, of the importance of seeing beyond the surface of things. Now that we've explored the symbolic power of the owl in Greek mythology and its connection to Athena, we can turn our focus to Zeus's personal relationship with this mysterious bird. Zeus's fondness for owls wasn't simply about admiration for the creature's wisdom and mystical qualities. The owl was also a gift, a divine offering from Athena herself. And this gesture marked the beginning of something much deeper between Zeus and the bird. Athena, the goddess of wisdom and strategy, was deeply connected to the owl, which was her sacred animal. It made sense that she would pass this sacred creature to Zeus, as the two gods shared a bond through their mutual love of wisdom. But Athena's gift wasn't just about the animal itself. It was a gesture laden with meaning. Athena, as a goddess of intellect, knew the importance of balance between power and wisdom. By offering Zeus the owl, she was reminding him of this balance, of the need to see the world not just with strength and thunder, but with insight and reflection. Zeus's acceptance of the owl, therefore, was a recognition of this very balance. Though he was the god of thunder and storms, commanding the skies with an iron fist, he understood that wisdom was not always the loudest force in the room. It was often quiet, subtle, and hidden in the shadows, much like the owl itself. By taking Athena's gift, Zeus wasn't just accepting a token of her wisdom. He was also acknowledging that there were realms of knowledge beyond his immediate reach, areas of life he couldn't control or fully understand. Historians still argue over the deeper meaning of this exchange. Was it a sign of Zeus's humility, an acknowledgement of the fact that even the mightiest god could benefit from wisdom and foresight? Or was it a more strategic move on his part, recognizing that the owl could offer him guidance and prophecy that would help him rule more effectively? In either case, the owl became a symbol of the wisdom that Zeus, despite his power, could always use more of. It wasn't just a symbol of intellect. It was a reminder that no matter how powerful one might be, there would always be unseen forces at work in the world that demanded attention. The owl's role as a messenger of fate and knowledge was integral to Zeus's understanding of his place in the cosmos. Zeus, for all his might, was still bound by the laws of fate and destiny. The owl, with its connection to the unseen and the unknowable, was a creature that could peer into the hidden realms of prophecy, guiding Zeus through the uncertainties of the future. This wasn't just a matter of receiving cryptic messages. It was a divine tool that could help him make decisions in an unpredictable world. As the ruler of Mount Olympus, Zeus had many divine attributes: strength, wisdom, foresight. But he was not omniscient. Even the king of the gods needed guidance. And this is where the owl played a pivotal role. Its ability to fly silently through the night, its eyes that could pierce the darkness, made it the perfect symbol for the kind of insight that Zeus could use in his complex dealings with other gods, mortals, and fate itself. But what made the owl even more fascinating was its role as a guide to the unseen. In ancient Greece, owls were often believed to have mystical qualities, particularly their ability to see things that others couldn't. Some myths even suggested that owls could foresee the future, giving them a prophetic power that connected them to the gods. Zeus, in his desire to rule with foresight and clarity, would have appreciated this aspect of the owl. After all, no ruler could maintain their power without understanding the forces at work in the future, and the owl could offer glimpses of what lay ahead. The owl, then, wasn't just a divine companion for Zeus. It was an essential tool for navigating the complexities of his rule. Its wisdom and prophetic abilities made it more than just a companion. It became an active participant in the decisions that shaped the future of the gods and the mortal world. And in that way, the owl's role in Zeus's life was far from incidental. It was a reminder that even the gods themselves were subject to forces beyond their control and understanding, and that wisdom, like thunder, had its own way of striking when it was least expected. Perhaps it was in this relationship with the owl that Zeus learned one of his most important lessons: that even gods, despite their power and might, were not exempt from the mysteries of the universe. Like the owl that flew silently through the night, there were truths that could only be understood by those who were willing to listen, to observe, and to look beyond the surface of things. The owl, in its quiet wisdom, became a symbol not just of knowledge, but of the importance of embracing the unknown and learning to live with the mysteries that define life itself. So, the next time you think of Zeus, don't just picture him wielding thunder and lightning. Remember Datu, the owl perched by his side, quiet, knowing, ever watchful, a reminder that wisdom can be as powerful as the mightiest storm. We've already established that the owl was more than just a pet or symbol for Zeus and Athena. The bird's connection to the divine was tied to something much more profound: prophecy, foresight, and the mysteries that lay hidden in the world. Owls, in Greek mythology, weren't merely creatures of the night. They were messengers from the gods, vessels of insight and guidance. Their keen vision, able to pierce the dark, mirrored the gods' ability to peer into the unknown and understand the forces at play in the cosmos. But how did this link between owls and prophecy influence Zeus's role as the ruler of Mount Olympus? How did the owl's prophetic qualities impact the way Zeus governed? For Zeus, the owl wasn't just a symbol of wisdom, it was a tool, an instrument of divine insight. As the king of the gods, Zeus was constantly faced with decisions that affected not only the fate of the gods, but the lives of mortals as well. The challenges he faced were far from straightforward. His reign was filled with rivalries, betrayals, and conflicts, both among the gods and with humans. In this environment of uncertainty and chaos, the ability to foresee the future, if only in part, was invaluable. This is where the owl came in. In ancient Greece, owls were believed to have the power to see into the future, a gift that made them incredibly important in both myth and ritual. The owl's nocturnal nature gave it a kind of connection to the unknown, a world of hidden truths that Zeus, despite his power, couldn't always access. Prophecies were a key part of ancient Greek culture, and Zeus, as the god of fate and destiny, would have relied on all available tools to guide him through the ever-changing currents of time. The owl's prophetic abilities gave Zeus a means to peer into the unseen future and anticipate the twists of fate that would shape his world. The owl's connection to prophecy isn't just a matter of superstition. It was a deeply ingrained part of Greek religion and thought. The Greeks believed that animals, particularly birds, could serve as intermediaries between the human world and the divine. Birds were often seen as messengers of the gods, carrying omens and divine will to mortals. The owl, in particular, was revered as a creature capable of understanding the forces of fate that governed the universe. Zeus, in his role as the god who presided over destiny, would have understood the significance of this power. Historians still argue whether Zeus's relationship with the owl was rooted in genuine belief in its prophetic powers, or whether it was more a matter of symbolism, an expression of his connection to the mysteries of the universe. Some scholars believe that Zeus's connection to the owl was more metaphorical, a way of acknowledging that even the greatest of gods could not control everything, and that wisdom and foresight were essential in navigating the complexities of life. Others argue that, in the world of Greek mythology, the owl was not just symbolic, it was an active participant in the divine workings of fate, and its role in Zeus's life was one of genuine importance. Regardless of which perspective is correct, it's clear that the owl's ability to foresee the future would have been a powerful tool for Zeus. The bird's silent flight, its keen eyes that saw in the dark, represented an understanding of the world that went beyond the immediate. For Zeus, whose rule was constantly challenged by forces both known and unknown, the owl provided a reminder that no matter how much power one might have, there would always be mysteries and uncertainties that demanded careful attention and reflection. Zeus's reliance on the owl as a messenger of prophecy wasn't just about obtaining information. It was about understanding the flow of fate and destiny. In Greek mythology, fate was an unstoppable force, something that even the gods could not always control. The owl, in this context, served as a guide to understanding the patterns of fate, helping Zeus navigate the complexities of the world. Through the owl's eyes, Zeus could gain insight into what was to come, preparing him for the challenges and decisions that lay ahead. But what was the true nature of this prophetic relationship between Zeus and the owl? Was Zeus truly relying on the owl to give him insight into the future? Or was he simply using the bird as a symbol of wisdom to help him navigate the uncertainties of his reign again? Historians continue to debate this question, as the lines between mythology and reality are often blurred in the world of Greek gods. Some believe that Zeus's connection to the owl was less about the bird itself and more about the way it symbolized his own need for wisdom and foresight in the face of uncertainty. Others argue that the owl's role as a messenger of prophecy was a more active and tangible part of Zeus's reign. Regardless of the specifics, it's clear that the owl had a significant role in Zeus's world. The bird's prophetic abilities, its connection to the unseen, and its quiet wisdom made it an invaluable companion for the king of the gods. Zeus's relationship with the owl was more than just symbolic. It was a practical and spiritual connection to the forces of fate, offering him a glimpse into the future that would help him shape the destiny of gods and mortals alike. In the end, the owl's role in Greek mythology, and in Zeus's life specifically, was a reflection of the delicate balance between power and wisdom. The owl wasn't just a companion or a symbol. It was a reminder that even the mightiest gods needed guidance, foresight, and an understanding of the mysteries that lay hidden beneath the surface. Zeus, despite his immense power, was not all-knowing, and the owl served as a reminder that no matter how strong or wise one might be, there were always forces at play that could not be fully understood. We've now explored the owl's role as a symbolic and prophetic companion to Zeus, but its significance in Greek mythology extended far beyond the divine. Birds, especially owls, had a deeply ingrained presence in the everyday lives of the ancient Greeks. In fact, their connection to the gods was reflected in how the Greeks saw birds in general, as messengers, omens, and divine intermediaries. But for Zeus, this connection to the avian world didn't just stop with the owl. His dominion over the skies, the very realm where birds soared, gave him a unique relationship with many creatures of the air. The question, then, is not just why Zeus had a fondness for owls, but how owls fit into the broader picture of the animals that symbolized him. Zeus was, after all, the god of the sky, thunder, lightning, and storms. His connection to the heavens made him the ruler of all that flew, both the majestic and the obscure. The eagle-con, for instance, was another bird that was closely linked to Zeus. The eagle, known for its strength and dominance, represented Zeus's power and authority. In fact, the eagle was often considered Zeus's sacred bird, and it played a crucial role in several key myths. Most notably, the eagle was the bird that Zeus sent to retrieve Ganymede, the mortal youth who was made the cup-bearer of the gods. While the eagle symbolized Zeus's might and regal nature, the owl offered a stark contrast. The owl wasn't a bird of power or aggression. Instead, it was quiet, observant, and perceptive. Its role wasn't about enforcing Zeus's authority. It was about providing the insight and wisdom that even the king of the gods needed in times of uncertainty. This made the owl a kind of spiritual counterpart to the more forceful symbols of Zeus's power. And while the eagle was a visible symbol of Zeus's dominance in the skies, the owl served as a subtle reminder that wisdom was just as vital as power in the divine realm. Historians still argue whether Zeus's preference for the owl had anything to do with his broader relationships with other creatures, or whether the owl's qualities were simply more appealing to him in his role as ruler of the gods. While the eagle and the owl were both important to him, their symbolic roles were fundamentally different. The eagle stood for Zeus's physical strength, his control over nature, and his undeniable presence in the world. But the owl's significance lay in its ability to see beyond the obvious, to understand the forces at work in the unseen realms. The owl, in a sense, helped balance Zeus's more aggressive attributes with the softer, more introspective qualities that he, too, needed in order to rule effectively. However, Zeus's affection for owls also reveals a certain vulnerability, something that might not be immediately obvious when we think of him as the thunderous god of the heavens. The owl's quiet wisdom may have appealed to Zeus because it was a reminder that no matter how powerful one became, there was always something more to learn. The owl's connection to the unseen world, its ability to see in the dark, reflected the idea that there were always aspects of life and fate beyond Zeus's control. No matter how powerful he was, owls, in this sense, might have represented the unknown, forces at play that Zeus could not dominate, but that he had to acknowledge. This is where Zeus's broader relationship with animals becomes particularly interesting. As the god of the sky, Zeus had dominion over not just birds, but all creatures of the air and weather. His power reached into the thunderclouds, the winds, and even the storms that raged across the land. He wasn't merely the ruler of one species. He governed all the animals that lived within his realm. The eagle, as a creature of the sky, was a fitting companion for Zeus, symbolizing his power and dominance over the natural world. But the owl, with its quiet grace and its connection to the mystical, represented a different kind of power, one that was rooted in perception, insight, and foresight. Yet, as powerful as Zeus was, he wasn't immune to the unpredictable forces of nature, fate, and the divine. Zeus, despite his ability to summon lightning and control the weather, could not foresee every outcome. Like any ruler, he had moments of doubt, uncertainty, and struggle. And in those moments, the owl became more than just a companion. It was a reminder that even gods needed wisdom, that the world wasn't always as straightforward as it seemed. The owl's connection to prophecy, to seeing the future, may have been something Zeus turned to in his times of greatest need. But Zeus wasn't alone in recognizing the owl's unique abilities. Athena, as we've seen, also held the owl in high regard, seeing it as a reflection of her own intellectual and strategic prowess. The owl's role in both their lives was about balance. Zeus represented the thunderous, the visible, the forceful, while Athena, in her wisdom, represented the quiet, the cerebral, the unseen. Together, their shared appreciation for the owl highlighted the divine equilibrium between power and insight, between action and reflection. So, what did Zeus's relationship with the owl ultimately teach us? Perhaps it shows that even in the realm of the gods, wisdom is as important as strength. While the eagle may have been the symbol of Zeus's authority, it was the owl that reminded him of the importance of seeing the world as it truly was, not just through the lens of power, but through the eyes of knowledge and understanding. The owl, then, wasn't just Zeus's friend. It was a guide, a teacher, and a reminder that even the most powerful gods are not above learning, evolving, and seeking out the mysteries that lie hidden in the dark corners of the world. In Greek mythology, animals were not mere creatures of the earth. They were divine manifestations of deeper truths, often serving as messengers or reflections of the gods themselves. This notion of animals as intermediaries between the mortal and the divine was not just a quirky aspect of mythological storytelling, but a deeply ingrained part of Greek religious practices. Birds, in particular, played an essential role in this. And Zeus, as the god of the skies, had a special relationship with many birds beyond just the owl and the eagle. The bird world, with its vast array of symbolism, was a reflection of the complex dynamics between the gods, fate, and the natural world. Beyond the owl and the eagle, Zeus's affinity for birds extended to other creatures that inhabited the heavens. His connection to these flying creatures was not just a matter of his dominion over the skies, but a broader representation of his power and influence over the natural and supernatural realms. The most notable of these connections is Zeus's association with the swan. The swan, another majestic bird of the skies, is intertwined with several key myths about Zeus. One of the most famous stories is the tale of Zeus transforming into a swan to seduce the beautiful Leda. In this myth, Zeus took the form of a swan in order to approach Leda, the queen of Sparta. And through this transformation, the swan became a symbol of Zeus's ability to transcend form and manipulate the natural world for his own purposes. The swan, like the owl and the eagle, also came to represent aspects of Zeus's divine identity. His shape-shifting power, his ability to dominate and influence the world around him, and his connection to the forces of nature that no mortal or god could fully control. But what is particularly fascinating about Zeus's relationship with birds is not just the specific species he favored, but the way these birds represented different facets of his character. The eagle, as we've seen, was a symbol of Zeus's might, an animal that soared high above all others, asserting its dominance over the skies. The owl, in contrast, represented wisdom and foresight, offering insight into the unknown realms of fate and prophecy. The swan, with its delicate beauty, mirrored Zeus's ability to manipulate situations and emotions and transform in ways that defied expectations. Together, these birds created a kind of divine ecosystem for Zeus, a balance between strength, wisdom, and cunning. Historians still argue over whether Zeus's association with these birds had deeper philosophical meaning, or whether they were simply chosen to reflect his various divine attributes. Some scholars suggest that each bird was a reflection of a different aspect of Zeus's character. The eagle, for example, could represent Zeus's authority as the king of the gods. The owl, as we've explored, symbolized the need for wisdom and insight, something that even Zeus had to rely on from time to time. And the swan, with its graceful beauty and shape-shifting nature, may have represented Zeus's ability to move in and out of situations with ease, adapting to circumstances that required more than just brute force. What is clear, however, is that Zeus's relationships with these birds went far beyond simple symbolism. In the Greek worldview, birds were more than just animals. They were vessels for divine will, carriers of omens, and intermediaries between the gods and humans. Birds were believed to carry the messages of the gods, and their movements in the sky were seen as divine signs. This is why Zeus, as the god of the skies, had such a profound connection with them. They were not just part of his domain. They were a reflection of his power and his connection to the forces of fate and destiny. Zeus's connection to the owl, eagle, swan, and other birds also speaks to a larger theme in Greek mythology: the idea that the gods were not merely abstract figures of power, but beings that were intimately tied to the natural world. In this way, birds weren't just messengers of the gods. They were physical representations of the divine order itself. The owl's watchful eyes, the eagle's majestic flight, and the swan's graceful form all reflected aspects of Zeus's nature, just as they reflected the forces of nature he commanded. The owl, in particular, was a reminder to Zeus and to the ancient Greeks that wisdom, foresight, and understanding were just as important as strength. As we've discussed, the owl's ability to see in the dark, to perceive what others could not, made it a fitting companion for a god like Zeus, who, despite his immense power, could not foresee every twist of fate. The owl's connection to prophecy and its role as a divine messenger suggested that even gods needed guidance, and that their power was tempered by the forces of destiny that lay beyond their control. In a way, Zeus's relationship with birds reveals a deeper truth about his character. Despite his vast power, he was not immune to the forces that shaped the world. The birds, with their ability to soar above the earth and navigate the heavens, symbolized Zeus's connection to the forces of fate, fate that could not always be controlled or predicted. The owl, in particular, was a reminder that knowledge and wisdom were powerful tools for Zeus to navigate the complexities of his reign. The birds were more than just animals to Zeus. They were divine partners in his cosmic role, guiding him through the uncertainties of fate and time. They were a reminder that while Zeus ruled over the skies and the heavens, there was always more to learn and more to understand about the forces that governed the universe. In the end, Zeus's connection to birds like the owl, the eagle, and the swan was a reminder that power alone was never enough. Wisdom, foresight, and an understanding of the unknown were just as important in maintaining balance in the world. And in this divine ecosystem of power, insight, and beauty, the owl played a vital role in guiding the mighty Zeus through the mysteries of life and the cosmos. Zeus's relationship with birds, and particularly the owl, is an excellent window into his multifaceted personality, a god whose reign was marked by both raw power and subtle wisdom. But as much as Zeus valued the role that these creatures played in his world, it's important to recognize the broader cultural significance of birds in ancient Greece. Birds were more than just divine companions. They were also integral to the religious and symbolic life of the people. In fact, birds were revered as omens, messengers from the gods that could communicate divine will, for better or for worse. This belief extended beyond Zeus's personal connection to owls and birds in general. Birds played an essential role in how the ancient Greeks understood the world, fate, and the gods' interventions in mortal lives. In ancient Greece, the flight of a bird was seen as a sign of something significant. The direction in which it flew, the species of bird, and even the way it flew were all interpreted as messages from the gods. Certain birds, like the owl, were considered to be especially divine in nature, while others were viewed as omens of danger or divine favor. For instance, the crow, often associated with Apollo, was considered an omen of truth and prophecy, but also one that could bring warnings of impending doom. Zeus, as the ruler of the skies, had a unique relationship with these bird omens. As the god who controlled thunder and lightning, he could send birds as signs or as messengers, be it to warn mortals of impending storms or to deliver divine prophecies. Some of the most famous myths of Zeus's interventions involve birds, where they serve as both symbols of divine will and the god's direct actions in the mortal world. For example, when Zeus sent his eagle to bring back Ganymede, it wasn't just a divine companion. It was a sign that the will of the gods had been enacted on the mortal realm. Similarly, owls, as divine messengers of wisdom, may have been used by Zeus to signal shifts in the divine order, providing hints about the course of fate. Historians still debate the extent to which the ancient Greeks genuinely believed that birds could communicate with the gods, or whether these beliefs were symbolic representations of their deep connection to nature. Regardless, the imagery of birds in mythology, particularly in relation to Zeus, emphasizes the deep respect the Greeks had for the natural world and their belief that nature, including birds, was a conduit through which the gods interacted with them. It also speaks to the complex relationship between fate, power, and knowledge in Greek mythology. In the case of Zeus, his relationship with birds and his use of them as messengers suggests that even the most powerful gods could not completely control fate, but rather had to work within the cosmic order, using these creatures to navigate the unknown. Birds like the owl, with their symbolic link to wisdom and foresight, were especially important in this regard. Zeus may have ruled over the skies, but the owl, with its watchful eyes and ability to see in the dark, represented a different kind of power, one rooted in knowledge of the unseen, the unknowable. This gave the owl a unique position in Zeus's life and in the broader divine scheme. The owl didn't just see the physical world, it saw beyond it, into the realm of fate and prophecy, a skill that even Zeus, despite his power, could not possess fully. This brings us to an interesting question. Was Zeus's use of the owl as a messenger and a symbol of wisdom just another tool for him to control fate? Or did it reflect a deeper, perhaps humbling truth about the nature of power itself? Some scholars argue that Zeus's relationship with the owl, and with other creatures like it, may have been an acknowledgement that, for all his might, he was still bound by forces that he could not completely control. Even Zeus, the god of thunder, could not fully understand or dictate the flow of fate. His partnership with the owl, in this light, seems to reflect a balance between power and humility. The owl's role in his world as a divine companion of wisdom suggests that Zeus recognized the importance of knowledge and foresight in ruling over the universe. In contrast to the chaotic and unpredictable nature of thunder, lightning, and storms, the owl's quiet observation and careful watch over the world reminded Zeus that wisdom and insight could be just as powerful as brute strength. The owl's ability to see in the dark, to perceive what others could not, was also a symbol of Zeus's own need for guidance in the face of the unknowable. While he controlled the skies and wielded the power of storms, there were always things that remained out of his grasp. The owl, by contrast, was a creature of the night, able to navigate the unseen world of darkness with ease. Its ability to see through the night was a reminder that there were always unseen forces at work in the world, whether in the heavens or on earth, and that even Zeus, with all his power, could benefit from the knowledge that came from the unseen. What makes this all the more intriguing is the contrast between Zeus and other gods who did not have the same connection to animals like the owl. Take, for example, Poseidon, the god of the sea. While Poseidon had dominion over the ocean and the creatures within it, he did not have the same deep connection to animals of the air. His reign was defined by water, storms, and earthquakes, but it lacked the same symbolic relationship with the creatures of the sky. Zeus's connection to the owl, then, speaks to his unique position as the god who ruled over both the visible and the invisible realms, the thunder that struck the earth and the wisdom that flowed from the heavens. Zeus's use of birds as omens and messengers also ties into a broader theme in Greek mythology: the role of the gods as both rulers and observers. The gods, though powerful, were not entirely detached from the mortal realm. They were ever present, watching over their creations and using animals like the owl to communicate their will. In this sense, the owl became not just a symbol of wisdom, but also a tool for Zeus to navigate the divine and mortal worlds, acting as a messenger and guide in the mysterious, often chaotic flow of fate. Ultimately, Zeus's connection to birds like the owl serves as a reminder that even the gods were part of the larger, unpredictable forces of nature. The owl's quiet wisdom balanced Zeus's loud power, offering insight into the things he could not always control. Whether it was as a prophetic messenger or a symbol of his humility in the face of fate, the owl remained a constant reminder that power, in any form, was incomplete without wisdom. By now, you've likely come to understand that Zeus's relationship with owls was more than just an interesting side note in Greek mythology. It was a symbolic bond that reinforced larger themes within the myths: the interplay between strength and wisdom, the visible and the invisible, and the gods' relationship with fate. The owl's role in Zeus's life wasn't isolated to just a few stories. Its presence echoed throughout the myths in different, often subtle, ways. But as we look deeper into Zeus's connection with owls and other creatures, it's important to recognize that the dynamic between gods and animals often extended beyond mere symbolism. It was tied to practical purposes and deeper cultural beliefs. In the ancient world, animals were not simply companions or symbols. They were often used as tools in divination and prophecy. The Greeks, like many ancient cultures, placed a heavy emphasis on omens and signs, whether from the flight of birds, the movement of the stars, or the behavior of animals. In this context, the owl wasn't just a wise and sacred creature. It also represented an essential tool for understanding the will of the gods, the flow of fate, and the outcomes of important events. Birds, particularly owls, were seen as divine messengers, creatures that could interpret the will of the gods and bring those messages to the mortal realm. Zeus, in his role as the god who ruled over both gods and men, had the responsibility of interpreting these omens, making decisions that affected the balance of the world. And it's likely that his association with the owl as a symbol of wisdom and prophecy had a practical side. It helped him navigate the often murky waters of fate and destiny. Zeus, despite his dominion over the skies, could not control everything. He was still subject to the whims of the fates, the forces of nature, and the unpredictable behavior of other gods. The owl, with its ability to see into the darkness and foresee the unknown, may have been an essential companion for Zeus, helping him interpret the omens that guided his decisions. In this light, the owl's role as a divine messenger was more than just a metaphor. It was a reflection of Zeus's need for guidance and foresight in a world that was often unpredictable and chaotic. The owl didn't just represent wisdom in the abstract sense. It was a tool that allowed Zeus to access deeper truths about the world, providing him with the kind of insight he needed to make informed decisions. Without the owl's connection to prophecy, Zeus's rule might have been far more erratic, driven by the capricious nature of his divine power rather than the steady hand of wisdom and foresight. Historians still argue whether the owl's role in Zeus's life was as integral to his decisions as we believe, or whether it was more symbolic, a reminder of the need for balance between power and knowledge. In any case, the owl's association with prophecy suggests that Zeus's reign was not just one of raw strength and authority, but one that required careful thought and reflection. And even Zeus, in all his glory, needed help navigating the complexities of fate. This also brings us to the broader role of birds in Greek culture. Birds were not just limited to divine symbolism. They played an essential role in Greek religious practices, particularly in rituals of divination. Birds were observed for signs and omens, and their behavior was believed to indicate the gods' approval or disapproval. If a bird flew in a particular direction, or if it appeared in an unusual place, it was interpreted as a sign from the gods. The owl, with its connection to Athena and later to Zeus, was especially important in these rituals. Owls were often seen as the bearers of good omens, signifying wisdom, clarity, and the divine will. Their presence in the skies was seen as a sign of divine favor, and their flight was carefully studied to predict the future or to divine the gods' plans. Zeus, of course, was the ultimate figure of authority in the divine realm, and the presence of birds like the owl in his myths can be interpreted as a way of asserting his control over fate and knowledge. By incorporating the owl into his divine sphere, Zeus demonstrated that his power was not just about dominating the heavens and the earth. It was about understanding the world and the forces that operated within it, about seeing through the darkness and into the heart of the unknown. And the owl, with its quiet wisdom and keen sight, became a companion that guided Zeus through this mysterious and often turbulent journey. As we consider Zeus's broader relationship with animals, particularly birds, we see that his power wasn't confined to the physical realm. His reign over Mount Olympus and the world was about more than just his ability to summon lightning or control the weather. It was about understanding the forces of the world, fate, prophecy, wisdom, and using these forces to maintain balance and order. The owl, as a symbol of insight, foresight, and divine communication, was a key part of this balance. In the same way that Zeus relied on his thunderbolt to control the skies, he relied on the owl to provide guidance through the darkness, to see what others could not, and to understand the intricate workings of fate. It's interesting to note that this connection between Zeus and the owl didn't just end with Zeus's reign. The owl continued to hold significance in later Greek and Roman mythology, maintaining its association with wisdom and prophecy. Athena, in particular, retained her close bond with the owl, and the bird continued to be seen as a symbol of knowledge and insight. This enduring symbolism shows just how deeply the owl was embedded in the cultural fabric of the ancient world, as both a literal and figurative guide to the mysteries of life. Zeus's connection to the owl ultimately speaks to a larger theme within Greek mythology: the balance between power and wisdom, strength and foresight. The owl was a reminder that even gods, no matter how powerful, needed insight and understanding to navigate the world around them. And in this balance, Zeus's relationship with the owl stands as one of the most intriguing and meaningful connections in his divine life. The owl's continued presence in Greek and later Roman mythology underscores its deep connection to wisdom and foresight. Yet, as we reflect on Zeus's relationship with the owl, it's important to remember that this connection wasn't limited to just the realm of myth. The owl, as a symbol, had a profound impact on the cultural identity of ancient Greece, and particularly on Athens. Athens, a city renowned for its intellectual prowess, saw the owl not just as an animal of the gods, but as a representation of the city's very essence, the pursuit of knowledge, insight, and enlightenment. As we saw earlier, the owl was so closely associated with Athens that it appeared on the city's coins, a testament to its symbolic importance. The Athenians, who prided themselves on their intellectual and philosophical achievements, adopted the owl as a representation of their values. It became more than just a symbol of Athena or Zeus. It was a sign of the city's identity as the cradle of Western thought and civilization. The owl, perched on the coins, staring with its wide, knowing eyes, embodied the very spirit of Athenian life, an unrelenting quest for wisdom, truth, and understanding of the world. This connection between the owl and Athens is also reflected in how the bird was revered in religious rituals. The owl was a sacred animal of Athena, and in certain ceremonies, it was believed that the goddess herself, or the divine spirit of wisdom, would manifest through the owl. Priests and priestesses would interpret the appearance and behavior of owls during these rituals, seeing them as divine messages that provided guidance or warnings. The owl's ability to silently fly through the night, its keen vision that allowed it to see what others could not, made it a fitting representative of Athena's own wisdom. In the case of Zeus, the owl's association with Athens further emphasized the deep intellectual bond between the gods and the ancient Greeks. It wasn't just that Zeus needed the owl for guidance. The owl was also a symbol of a greater cultural belief. That wisdom was not only a divine gift, but a human pursuit that transcended even the gods themselves. Zeus's relationship with the owl, while rooted in mythology, reflects the broader Greek understanding of knowledge as a force that connected both gods and mortals. The owl was a reminder that no one, not even the king of the gods, was above seeking wisdom and understanding. Historians still debate the significance of the owl in Greek culture, particularly in the context of its connection to Athens. Some argue that the owl's symbolic importance was simply a reflection of the city's emphasis on rational thought and philosophy. Others suggest that it was a more mystical connection, with the owl acting as a divine guide between the human and divine realms. Regardless of the interpretation, the fact remains that the owl was more than just a creature in Greek mythology. It was a representation of the intellectual ideals that shaped Athenian culture, and by extension, Western thought as we know it today. Zeus, for all his might and divine authority, recognized the importance of wisdom, and this is where the owl comes into play. In many ways, the owl's place in Zeus's mythology can be seen as a reflection of a larger truth about the nature of power. While Zeus was known for his thunderbolts and his reign over the gods, he also needed wisdom to navigate the complex world of fate and divine politics. In this respect, the owl's quiet, watchful presence served as a reminder that even gods, powerful as they were, required guidance to understand the mysteries of the world around them. But the owl's connection to Zeus wasn't solely about wisdom. It was also about understanding the importance of foresight. The owl, with its ability to see in the dark, represented the divine ability to peer into the unknown and predict what was to come. Zeus, as the king of the gods, had to understand the intricate web of destiny and fate that governed not only the gods but also the mortal world. While Zeus had control over the heavens, he could not control fate. And the owl, with its mystical connection to prophecy, served as a divine tool to help him navigate the unknown future. Zeus's use of the owl also reflected his role as a god who governed the natural world. The owl, like many animals, was an essential part of the balance of nature. And in Greek thought, animals were seen as reflections of the divine order. The owl's keen sight and silent flight mirrored the divine ability to understand the hidden workings of the universe. For Zeus, the owl represented a deep connection to the natural world, an understanding of how the forces of fate, nature, and wisdom all intertwined. In the broader context of Greek mythology, Zeus's relationship with the owl can be seen as part of a larger theme. Gods and mortals alike needed wisdom, foresight, and insight to navigate the world around them. The owl, with its silent wisdom, was a perfect companion for Zeus, reminding him that power alone was not enough. Wisdom and foresight were essential tools for a god who ruled over the skies and the heavens. Without the owl's guidance, Zeus's reign may have been much more chaotic, driven solely by raw power rather than a deeper understanding of the forces that shape the world. But even as we reflect on the owl's role in Zeus's life, it's important to remember that this connection wasn't just a matter of mythology. It also played a significant part in the cultural consciousness of the Greeks. The owl was a symbol of wisdom, knowledge, and divine guidance, not just for the gods, but for the mortals who revered it. It was a bird that saw the world differently, a bird that could understand the hidden forces at work in the universe. And for Zeus, this ability to see beyond the obvious was just as important as his power over thunder and lightning. By now, we've seen how Zeus's connection to the owl and other birds symbolized more than just his power over the skies. It reflected his need for wisdom, insight, and guidance in navigating the complex and unpredictable forces of fate. But the owl's role in the mythology doesn't end with Zeus's reign. The bird's symbolism continued to evolve and play a significant role in later myths, especially as the Greeks' understanding of the world and their relationship with the divine deepened over time. One interesting aspect of Zeus's relationship with owls is how it sheds light on the ongoing debate in Greek mythology about the nature of divine power and its limits. Zeus was not only a god of action, but also a god of fate. As the ruler of Mount Olympus, he was expected to maintain the cosmic order and ensure that the flow of events, whether in the heavens or on earth, ran smoothly. However, even with his immense power, Zeus could not control everything. There were forces at play that no god, not even he, could completely govern. This sense of divine limitation is where the owl's presence becomes especially significant. The owl, with its connection to prophecy, foresight, and the unseen, was a constant reminder to Zeus that there were forces of fate that were beyond his command. Unlike his thunderbolts, which could strike down any mortal or god in his path, the owl's wisdom was more subtle. It represented the quieter, more introspective side of existence, those parts of the world that couldn't be easily controlled by brute force. In a sense, the owl offered Zeus a kind of humility, a reminder that, for all his power, he was still part of a larger cosmic order that required him to seek guidance. Just like any other being, divine or mortal. Historians still argue about the true nature of Zeus's relationship with the owl. Was the owl simply a tool of prophecy, a divine companion that helped Zeus navigate the unknown? Or was the owl something deeper, a reflection of Zeus's own understanding of his limitations as a god? There's no easy answer to this, as the ancient Greeks themselves wrestled with similar questions. Some myths portray Zeus as an all-powerful god, a figure whose control over the heavens and earth seemed absolute. Yet, even in these tales, Zeus was not omniscient or omnipotent. He could be deceived, tricked, or outmaneuvered by other gods or by the whims of fate. In this context, the owl was more than just a wise creature. It was a symbol of the forces that even Zeus could not control. This theme of divine limitation, echoed through the owl, is something that continued to resonate in later Greek thought, especially among philosophers. For instance, the philosopher Socrates, in his discussions of wisdom, famously said that true wisdom comes from recognizing one's own ignorance. The owl, often associated with Athena, became a symbol of this very idea. The owl's ability to see beyond the obvious, to perceive the hidden truths, was not just a reflection of intellectual power, but also of humility. It reminded those who looked upon it that wisdom was not about knowing everything, but about understanding the limits of one's knowledge. In Zeus's case, the owl might have been a reminder of this very idea. Despite his supreme status as the god of thunder, Zeus could not know everything, nor could he control all the forces of fate. He needed guidance from the owl, a creature that could see the unseen and navigate the mysteries of the universe. This partnership between power and wisdom, strength and foresight, was a central theme in Greek mythology and speaks to a larger philosophical ideal, that wisdom and understanding are as powerful as brute strength. Interestingly, the owl's significance did not fade away as time went on. While Zeus's reign was largely mythological, the owl continued to represent wisdom in Greek and Roman thought. The owl's connection to Athena as the goddess of wisdom carried through to later periods, where it was often seen as a symbol of learning, intellect, and insight. In the Hellenistic and Roman periods, the owl was associated with the ideal of intellectual enlightenment, and its image appeared on coins, in artworks, and in the iconography of institutions devoted to learning. Even in the modern world, the owl remains a symbol of wisdom and insight. Its presence in literature, art, and even popular culture continues to evoke themes of mystery, knowledge, and the ability to see beyond the ordinary. The owl's legacy, stretching from ancient Greece to today, illustrates the enduring power of its symbolism, a power that Zeus, in his own time, understood well. But as we wrap up our exploration of Zeus and the owl, it's important to reflect on what their connection ultimately reveals about the nature of power. Zeus, as the king of the gods, had control over the heavens and earth. He could wield thunderbolts, command storms, and shape the destinies of both gods and mortals. But despite his immense power, Zeus was not infallible. He wasn't immune to the forces of fate, the complexities of destiny, or the need for wisdom. The owl, with its quiet and watchful eyes, represented the side of Zeus that sought understanding beyond the visible world. Its silent flight, its ability to see in the dark, echoed Zeus's own journey of learning and growth. In this way, Zeus's relationship with the owl wasn't just about his admiration for the bird. It was about his acknowledgement of his own limitations. The owl reminded him that power, while important, was not enough on its own. To rule the universe effectively, Zeus had to see beyond the immediate, to understand the hidden forces at play in the world. And in this, the owl was both a guide and a teacher. The owl's role as a symbol of wisdom, foresight, and the unknown is one of the most enduring legacies of Greek mythology. It serves as a reminder that, even for gods like Zeus, there is always more to learn, more to see, and more to understand. The owl's quiet wisdom became a symbol that transcended time and culture, reminding us all of the importance of seeing the world with more than just our eyes, of looking deeper, of understanding the mysteries that lie just beyond our reach. As we approach the final chapters of this exploration into Zeus's relationship with owls and their place in Greek mythology, it's important to reflect on the evolution of the owl's symbolic role. We've seen how the owl was associated with wisdom, prophecy, and divine insight. But as Greek mythology and the worship of the gods evolved, so did the owl's significance, both within the divine narratives and in the broader cultural imagination of the ancient Greeks. The owl's continued importance can be directly tied to its connection to the goddess Athena. As the goddess of wisdom, war strategy, and civilization, Athena maintained a strong link to the owl throughout Greek myth and culture. Athena's owl became a defining symbol of Athenian identity, emblematic not only of divine knowledge, but also of the city's intellectual and political power. By adopting the owl as part of its identity, Athens sent a clear message to the world about the city's values, that wisdom, reason, and foresight were just as important as physical might. The owl was also seen as a protector of the city, watching over its people and guiding them toward a prosperous, enlightened future. Zeus, of course, was not only a god of the heavens, but also an omnipresent ruler over the entire divine and mortal realms. His connection with the owl had already established a deep association with prophecy, wisdom, and foresight. But his relationship with Athena's owl took on a different role in later myths and in the cultural symbolism of the period. While Zeus had already established his affinity with owls as creatures that symbolized the balance of power and wisdom, Athena's influence allowed the owl to carry a more intellectual, cerebral significance, particularly in the context of political and philosophical discourse. One of the most intriguing aspects of the owl's presence in Greek mythology is how it came to represent the paradox between power and wisdom. While Zeus was often portrayed as the mighty god whose strength was unrivaled, the owl served as a quiet reminder that even the most powerful gods could benefit from the kind of wisdom that Athena embodied. For a god like Zeus, whose command of the natural elements made him an imposing figure, the owl was a counterpart that reflected the more contemplative, strategic side of life. In this way, the owl symbolized balance, not just between gods, but between different facets of existence. Historians still argue about the nature of Zeus's humility and recognition of wisdom. Some suggest that his bond with the owl was symbolic, a way of acknowledging that wisdom was something that even gods, in their grandeur, required in order to govern effectively. Others believe that the owl's presence in Zeus's life was more pragmatic, that it served as an actual tool in his decision-making process. In either case, the owl's role in Zeus's narrative was multifaceted. It wasn't just an emblem of intellectual prowess, it represented a deeper understanding of fate and the cosmos, forces that even the mightiest gods, like Zeus, had to reckon with. One of the more intriguing layers to the owl's symbolism, particularly in Zeus's context, is the bird's relationship with prophecy. As the god of fate and destiny, Zeus was believed to have control over much of the world's outcomes. However, like all gods, he was also tied to the forces of fate. The owl, often associated with seeing the unseen and perceiving omens, served as a divine tool to help Zeus navigate the complexities of these forces. As we saw earlier, the owl's ability to predict future events or offer guidance from the gods was a key element in its role within the divine order. Whether or not Zeus himself directly relied on owls for prophecy remains a subject of debate. But there's little doubt that the owl's connection to foresight influenced how Zeus governed the universe. For Zeus, the owl's prophetic nature likely spoke to his need for guidance in situations that were beyond his control. Although Zeus wielded immense power, he was not omnipotent or omniscient. The owl's ability to understand what lay ahead allowed Zeus to make better decisions, particularly when confronted with uncertainties about the future. Whether in battle, in matters of diplomacy, or in the personal conflicts that often arose among the gods, the owl, with its quiet wisdom, helped Zeus see what others could not. This helped maintain the delicate balance of power within the divine hierarchy. In the context of Greek religion and culture, the owl's role as a bearer of wisdom and a messenger of the gods made it a key figure in many of the myths surrounding Zeus. And as Athens adopted the owl as a symbol of its own philosophical traditions, the bird's presence in the city's iconography served as a reminder that wisdom and foresight were necessary qualities for those who sought to rule, whether in the heavens or on earth. What we come to understand, as we reflect on Zeus and the owl, is that the connection between them was not simply a mythological quirk or a quaint tale about animal symbolism. It was a reflection of the ancient Greek understanding that wisdom was an essential component of power, and that all rulers, gods and mortals alike, needed insight to guide them through the complexities of the world. The owl, with its quiet wisdom, served as a reminder that even the mightiest of beings could benefit from seeing the world not just with their eyes, but with their minds and hearts. Historians still debate the exact meaning behind Zeus's bond with the owl. But one thing is clear. This relationship was symbolic of something much deeper than just a god's affection for a bird. It spoke to the eternal human and divine need for balance between strength and intellect, between action and reflection. Zeus's relationship with the owl wasn't just about power. It was about understanding the forces of fate, the unseen mysteries of the world, and the need for wisdom in navigating the unknown. As the myths of Zeus, Athena, and the owl continue to resonate today, they serve as a powerful reminder that knowledge is as essential as strength in the pursuit of balance, power, and wisdom, even in the world of the gods. The owl was a symbol of something that transcended mere domination and control. It was a symbol of clarity, foresight, and the ability to see beyond the surface of things, a skill that even Zeus, mighty as he was, recognized as indispensable. As we near the end of our journey through Zeus's connection to owls, it's time to shift our focus slightly. We've explored how the owl was a symbol of wisdom, prophecy, and foresight, and how it played an essential role in Greek mythology, particularly in relation to Zeus and Athena. But what about the fate of the owl's symbolic importance in later times? How did its role in the divine world evolve as the Greek world changed? Especially as the myths and religious practices surrounding Zeus began to fade into history. The owl's symbolism remained potent throughout the classical and Hellenistic periods. And even after the fall of ancient Greek religion, it continued to resonate in various ways, notably through its connection to Athena and the philosophical ideas it represented. The owl's symbolic legacy extended beyond Zeus's mythology and became a part of a broader cultural movement, the reverence for knowledge, wisdom, and foresight. This movement was not limited to the Greeks alone. It spread throughout the Roman world and even influenced the development of Western thought in later centuries. One of the most lasting influences of the owl's association with Athena, and by extension, Zeus, was its role as a symbol of intellectual and philosophical pursuits. The owl, in its quiet, contemplative demeanor, became emblematic of the pursuit of knowledge, an idea that found its fullest expression in the rise of philosophical schools like those of Plato and Aristotle in Athens. For the ancient Greeks, the owl wasn't just a divine messenger or an oracle. It was a symbol of the search for truth and understanding, of the quest to perceive the world not just as it seemed, but in its deeper, more complex form. Athens, the birthplace of philosophy, adopted the owl as a city emblem. In doing so, it made the bird more than just a sacred creature of the gods. It became a symbol of the city's intellectual achievements. The owl's appearance on Athenian coins was no mere decoration. It was a statement of Athens' self-awareness as a center of learning and reason. By associating itself with the owl, Athens was aligning itself with the qualities of wisdom, insight, and reflection that were central to its culture. This same association made its way into the Roman Empire, where the owl was often used to represent knowledge and wisdom in imperial art, coinage, and philosophy. The owl's cultural role continued to evolve through the ages. As the ancient Greek gods faded from active worship and the myths of Mount Olympus became more symbolic, the owl's presence persisted as a symbol of intellectual power. It became synonymous with scholarly wisdom, even as the focus of religious practice shifted from the gods to more secular forms of knowledge. The owl was now a universal symbol of intellect, a bird associated with thinkers, writers, and artists, who used it to represent the deeper pursuit of understanding. The owl continued to adorn libraries, academic institutions, and even personal emblems, reinforcing its status as a symbol of learning and knowledge. But, interestingly, the owl's association with Zeus did not entirely fade. In some ways, the symbolism of the owl as a messenger of prophecy and divine guidance continued to influence how people saw the world. The bird's silent flight, its ability to see in the dark, and its representation of the hidden knowledge of the universe were qualities that remained central to ideas of wisdom and enlightenment. Even as Zeus's direct role in human affairs receded, the owl still carried the weight of divine foresight and insight. Yet, as the centuries passed, Zeus's direct involvement with owls became more of a historical curiosity than a dominant theme in mythology. The owl remained an important figure in cultural and intellectual contexts. But its connection to the gods, particularly to Zeus, began to diminish as the ancient religious traditions of Greece were replaced by other belief systems. However, the underlying themes of the owl's symbolism, wisdom, the search for knowledge, the connection between the visible and invisible worlds, remain deeply ingrained in the collective consciousness. The owl's symbolic shift from a divine messenger in Greek mythology to a universal symbol of knowledge reflects a broader cultural trend. In ancient Greece, animals were often seen as the living representations of the divine order. But as Greek mythology evolved, so did its symbols. The owl's transition from a divine creature that guided Zeus to a more secular, philosophical emblem was part of a larger movement away from the gods as active participants in human affairs toward a more abstract, intellectual conception of the world. Yet, it is important to recognize that the owl's transformation in meaning didn't erase its connection to Zeus. Rather, it layered its symbolism, adding depth to the bird's representation as not only a creature of prophecy and wisdom, but also as a symbol of intellectual enlightenment. The owl became, in a sense, the keeper of knowledge that transcended the gods, one that could be understood and applied by anyone in pursuit of wisdom. In modern times, the owl continues to be a potent symbol of knowledge. Its image can be found in various forms, from logos of universities and scholarly organizations to the portrayal of wisdom in literature and popular culture. Its enduring symbolism, rooted in the myths of Zeus and Athena, serves as a reminder that wisdom is both divine and human. The owl's role in ancient Greek mythology was not merely to guide the gods. It was to inspire humans, too, to look beyond the surface of things, to see the world with clarity, and to understand the deeper truths that lie hidden in plain sight. In conclusion, the connection between Zeus and the owl, while centered in ancient Greek mythology, resonates deeply throughout history. The owl's journey from a divine messenger of Zeus to a cultural and intellectual symbol of wisdom speaks to the enduring power of knowledge. Even as the worship of Zeus faded, the owl's symbolism as a guide to understanding the mysteries of the universe remained. It teaches us that wisdom, insight, and the search for truth are eternal pursuits, qualities that remain relevant, whether in the mythological realms of gods or in the intellectual endeavors of humankind. As we bring this story to a close, it's important to reflect on the journey we've taken through the world of Zeus, the owl, and the deeper meanings embedded in their relationship. The owl, as a symbol, encapsulates so much of what ancient Greek mythology was about: power, wisdom, fate, and the mysteries of the universe. And yet, as we've seen, its role in Zeus's life wasn't just about the bird itself. The owl was a bridge, a way for both gods and mortals to navigate the complex forces of nature, destiny, and knowledge. Zeus, as the king of the gods, held immense power. He could control storms, summon thunder, and manipulate the heavens to his will. But even Zeus, despite his grandeur and dominion, had to acknowledge that there were forces beyond his control. There were hidden truths, unseen forces of fate, and mysteries of the universe that even the mightiest god could not fully comprehend. This is where the owl, with its silent wings and watchful eyes, stepped in. It served as both a guide and a symbol, reminding Zeus that there was more to existence than just raw power and dominance. What the owl represented was not just intellectual wisdom, but the ability to understand and accept the unknown. It wasn't just about seeing what was in front of you. It was about seeing beyond, into the darkness, where truth often lay hidden. This made the owl not just a companion, but a necessary tool for Zeus in his role as ruler of the gods. The owl's connection to prophecy, fate, and foresight helped Zeus navigate his many challenges. It wasn't enough for Zeus to rule with strength alone. He needed insight, wisdom, and the ability to see into the future. The owl became a reminder that wisdom, in many ways, was just as powerful as the mightiest of thunderbolts. As we've explored, the owl's symbolic role extended far beyond Zeus. Athena, too, held the owl in high esteem, and as the goddess of wisdom, she understood that the owl's unique qualities represented something essential about the world and the divine. The owl wasn't just a symbol of intellectual ability. It was a representation of the delicate balance between action and reflection, strength and wisdom. It was a reminder that, even in the realm of gods, knowledge and insight were crucial components of any successful reign, whether divine or mortal. The owl's legacy continued long after the myths of Zeus faded into history. It remained a symbol of wisdom in Athenian culture, where it was celebrated as the emblem of intellectual and philosophical pursuits. And even in the modern era, the owl still carries that same connotation. It's a symbol of learning, of seeing beyond the obvious, and of understanding the deeper truths of the world. The owl's journey from a divine messenger to a universal symbol of wisdom speaks to the enduring power of knowledge, both in myth and in life. In reflecting on Zeus's relationship with the owl, we come to understand that no matter how powerful we may become, whether as gods, kings, or individuals, there is always something to learn, something to see beyond the surface, something to uncover in the darkness. The owl, in its quiet wisdom, teaches us that true strength lies not just in our ability to act, but in our ability to understand, to foresee, and to navigate the complex, mysterious world around us. In this way, the story of Zeus and the owl is timeless. It speaks to a universal truth that transcends mythology: the balance between power and wisdom, between strength and foresight, is essential in the pursuit of knowledge and understanding. The owl, with its keen sight and silent flight, continues to remind us that wisdom is as powerful as any thunderbolt. It is a force that shapes the course of the world, both for gods and mortals alike. Now, as you reflect on the many layers of meaning embedded in this tale of Zeus and his feathered companion, remember that the owl's wisdom is still available to us all. Whether we are navigating the trials of our own lives, seeking knowledge, or striving to understand the mysteries of the world around us, we can always look to the owl for guidance. In its eyes, we find not just a symbol of the divine, but a reminder of our own potential to see beyond the surface, to look into the unknown, and to uncover the truths that lie hidden from plain sight. So, as we conclude tonight's journey, remember this: wisdom, like Zeus's thunderbolt, is a powerful force. And like the owl, it will guide us through the darkness, helping us navigate the complexities of life and fate with greater clarity and understanding. Just as Zeus once relied on the owl's watchful eyes, we too can find strength in the quiet wisdom of the world around us.